Hello, everyone, and a very special welcome to all our friends at Revival Waves of Glory Ministries. Have you ever felt like you're just going through the motions in your faith? Like you're doing all the right things, but something is missing? Well, in this explainer, we are going to dive deep into Bill Vincent's incredible book, Breaking the Chains of Religion, and really uncover that path from just empty ritual to a truly profound spiritual freedom.
So the big question is, how do we actually break these chains? We're going to tackle this in 5 key parts. First up, we've got to identify what we're up against, what the author calls the spirit of religion. Then we'll expose its 2 foundational strongholds, pride and guilt. After that, we'll learn the crucial difference between genuine spiritual insight and its counterfeit. And all of that leads us to the practical steps on the path to freedom, and finally, we'll see the amazing result, a revival that just cannot be contained.
Okay, let's get right to the heart of it. When the book talks about religion, it's so important to understand it's not attacking faith. Not at all. It's targeting a very specific, counterfeit spirit that can quietly and sneakily sabotage a real, vibrant relationship with God. So let's define what that actually looks like.
Now, this insight from the author is absolutely crucial. He frames this not as just some bad habit we can easily shake off. He wants you to picture a massive building built on a solid rock foundation. That's the spirit of religion, and it's held up by 2 incredibly powerful cornerstones that make it feel almost impossible to demolish. Understanding just how strong this structure is, well, that's the first step in what is a very real spiritual battle.
And here it is, the fundamental difference. This spirit of religion, it tricks us. It makes us focus on what we do, our performance, our rituals, checking the boxes, instead of on who we know. It twists service into something that's really self-centered, a way for us to prove our own worth. It really is the difference between a faith that is alive and breathing and one that's just going through the motions.
So, what are those 2 cornerstones that are holding this entire phony structure up? The author points to 2 powerful forces, guilt and pride. And what's wild is how they work together, creating the very foundation of that religious spirit we so desperately need to break free from.
Think about how these 2 operate as a team. Guilt is that nagging voice in your head that says, you messed up again. Now you have to work really hard to make it right. It puts us on this exhausting treadmill of trying to earn forgiveness through our own efforts. And then you've got pride, which is a lot more subtle. It creates this rigid, perfect ideal, a set of man-made rules and impossibly high standards, not just for ourselves, but for everyone else too. And the book points out that these standards are often so much heavier than what God actually asks of us.
When you put them side by side like this, the contrast is just, wow, it's night and day. A religious mindset is always self-centered. It's asking, how do I look? What am I doing right? But a real relationship is God-centered, focused on what He's already done. One is rooted in our own exhausting effort, while the other is rooted in Jesus. And that last point there is so important. A religious spirit creates a heart that is closed off, defensive, and unteachable. But a real relationship requires us to stay open, humble, and always ready to learn.
This quote just cuts right to the heart of it, doesn't it? It perfectly captures the problem with such a sharp, memorable image. Is our faith something we just kind of dust off for an hour on Sunday morning to look the part? Or is it the very source of life and nourishment we run to every single day because we are genuinely, spiritually hungry for more of God?
All right, so moving on, the book takes a really interesting turn here. It delves into how this religious mindset can actually corrupt one of the most vital spiritual gifts we have, discernment. Instead of leading to wisdom and love, it twists it into suspicion and judgment.
You see, the spirit of religion, because it's rooted in that prideful perfectionism, is always on the hunt for the perfect, polished church. The author shares this amazing anecdote about a time they used chicken buckets for the offering. Some people absolutely loved it because it broke that stuffy formality, but it deeply offended those with a religious spirit. They just couldn't see past the imperfect container to the heart of the giving. It's the same way they'd be offended by unfinished walls, completely missing the beautiful spiritual construction happening inside those walls.
This is what the book calls counterfeit discernment. And it is so dangerous because it looks and sounds spiritual on the surface, but its motivation is all wrong. It comes from a place of suspicion and fear, not a place of love. It's the spirit that is an expert at finding every single flaw in a person or a church, but as the book highlights, it never offers a real solution. Its only goal is to criticize and tear down, never to build up.
I think this term the author uses, flesh detectives, is just brilliant. It paints such a clear picture, doesn't it?
Someone who is constantly investigating other people, not for their spiritual well-being, but just to find flaws in their humanity. They're on the lookout for the slip-up, the mistake, the little imperfection they can latch onto and use to judge.
And you know, this very issue is so central to the work of the author Bill Vincent and his entire ministry. At Revival Waves of Glory Ministries, the whole focus is on moving past this kind of superficial, fault-finding judgment to encounter real, genuine spiritual transformation. If any of these ideas are really hitting home for you, you can explore them so much more deeply over at revivalwavesofgloryministries.com.
So, this brings us to the most important question of all, right? We've talked a lot about the problem, but the book doesn't just leave us with a diagnosis of a spiritual sickness. It offers a clear prescription for healing and freedom. So how do we actually break free from these chains?
Okay, so let's get into the solution. This is the part we've all been waiting for. And what's so refreshing about the book's message is that the path to freedom isn't about trying harder or becoming more religious. Actually, it's about embracing the complete opposite of that.
The book lays out this really practical 4-step journey to get out of that bondage. It all starts by intentionally trading our obsession with perfection for God's grace. Then, and this is huge, it means creating an environment where it's safe for people to make mistakes and actually grow from them. The third step is a big one, letting go of what's comfortable and predictable. And it all culminates in authentic, from-the-heart worship, not just a Sunday morning performance.
This personal story from the author himself is just so powerful because it perfectly captures that idea of grace over perfection. He felt he wasn't ready, that he still had too many flaws to work on, which, let's be honest, is a feeling we can all relate to. But his pastor's wisdom just cut right through that religious mindset. God doesn't wait for us to be perfect. He calls us and anoints us and says we're ready right where we are, imperfections and all.
And this connects so perfectly with that powerful example from the Bible. Jesus knew Peter was going to stumble, deny him 3 times, yet he still entrusted him with a foundational role in building the church. A religious system would have disqualified Peter in a heartbeat, but a system of grace understands that our real growth often happens through our failures, not in the absence of them.
So what's the ultimate outcome here? What happens when a person, or even a whole community, chooses this path of freedom over the chains of religion? Well, the author describes it in one powerful word: revival.
And get this, the book shares this story that is it's staggering. A man is miraculously healed from cancer, a clear, powerful, undeniable act of God. He is bursting to share this incredible news to give glory to God, but a neighboring church refuses to let him speak. And the reason? Because the miracle didn't happen within their 4 walls, under their logo. That just shows how a religious spirit can become so territorial and so proud that it will actually reject a move of God if it doesn't fit its own narrow, man-made box.
Okay, let's bring it all home with the key takeaways from this amazing book. First, religion, as we've defined it, is a restrictive system all about works and appearances. In stark contrast, a true relationship with God is all about authenticity, grace, and real transformation. And don't forget those toxic cornerstones holding religion up: guilt and pride. Remember that real freedom is found not by trying to be perfect, but by embracing imperfection and worshiping authentically. And finally, this is so important: a genuine revival from God can never be contained by the man-made walls of religious structures.
And so the book leaves us with this powerful, personal challenge. It pushes every single one of us to look past the surface, to look beyond our comfortable rituals, and to honestly ask ourselves, what does real, authentic, life-altering spiritual transformation truly look like? Is it a polished, perfect exterior, or is it a messy, beautiful, and ongoing process of becoming more like Him? To continue exploring these incredible ideas and to learn more about the ministry that's championing this message, be sure to visit revivalwavesofgloryministries.com. Thank you for listening to the Deep Dive Podcast.